If somebody can show me a way where I can open source my stuff but not give it to hackers, I'm all ears.
If you're charging $2 a month and you're getting a support ticket once a month, you're already losing out, right?
Right. You could either give everybody unlimited bottles of DEET, or you could come up with a way to kill mosquitoes.
And I think, getting hacked is enough reason for people to feel like I might want to try something else. Welcome to Impressive Hosting, a podcast about the role hosting plays in shaping the open web. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman. On this show, we go deeper than uptime and dashboards. We talk about hosting as infrastructure, about ownership, independence, and what it takes to build ethical, high-end WordPress hosting that actually serves creators, businesses, and the internet itself. Before we dive in, head to impressive.host. That's where you can comment on episodes, ask follow-up questions, and help shape future conversations. You can also find links to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you listen. Today, our guest is Tom Raef from We Watch Your Website. This is part 2 of our conversation around protecting the open web and creating better security standards. And where we left off was in talking about how AI can be helpful in patching and also identifying vulnerabilities inside of plugins. One of the things we identified there is that a lot of times people will use AI and other things, and they'll find other tools, and they'll find possible vulnerabilities, things that look suspicious, but actually aren't. And that, you mentioned, Tom, is kind of like a detractor. It's taking away from your ability to actually work on true vulnerabilities, and that can be a lot of noise. You had mentioned that you're building an AI tool to help in identifying those vulnerabilities on plugins. And then we talked a little bit about the fact that there's 60,000 plugins out there. And then I mentioned that there's actually 60,000 plugins times however many versions of plugins that are out there in the wild. And, we're kind of going back and forth on this idea around like AI's ability to help hackers. Can we use that same information to help strengthen and harden security? But I think one of the things that, before we dive back into AI, one of the things I want to kind of push on here is this around why is it that we feel like customers don't want to update? We talked about it very briefly last time. And I think from my perspective, what I've seen over the years is that customers can get very set on a way of working, which is like basically set it and forget it. They build a website, it's working perfectly. They don't understand how things can change because browsers evolve or markup changes or standards, whatever. And they get this feeling that if they change it, if they touch it, it's going to break. And I think that's kind of complicated because, you don't want to, again, we don't want to instill fear. We don't want to make customers feel like things are overly complicated. But at the same time, we need them to be doing some things there and taking action. So, when we think about a host's responsibility to keeping things up to date, I firmly believe that the host can take a lot more of a curated approach, take a little bit more of a hands-on approach. What we do here at WP Cloud is that any one of our partners who's using the WP Cloud infrastructure knows that their entire platform is up to date. We keep the stack up to date. We only support the latest versions of PHP. We keep WordPress up to date, and it's forced updated rather quickly. We keep plugins up to date. And why do we do this? Well, we do it because it's the hard part that we want to make easy for end customers. And the fastest way and the best way to make it easy for end customers is, frankly, just to do it for them. And now I'll tell you, there are customers out there who get super nervous about this. But what we found is that for the vast majority of them, if you take the control out of their hands on something like this, and you just tell them, this is the way it works, this is the way it operates, we're going to update this for you, it actually builds confidence in them, in us, in taking care of that action for them, because they don't actually feel like it's kind of like a willy-nilly thing that they're not taking seriously, that they're not going to update it and break my site, that they're actually going to do something about it. And that's what we do with WP Cloud. We, if we keep things up to date, we're also doing a good job of making sure that we're not breaking anything. And if there is a break, we roll it back. But I'm curious from your perspective, Tom, like how much do you think it would help the overall market, the overall WordPress ecosystem, if hosts kind of enacted the same policies that WP Cloud does, in that it keeps everything up to date, whether the customer wants it or not?
To me, that has to be the industry standard. If you're going to say that you're offering managed WP services, everything that you guys do has to be included. And I'm definitely not your typical, website owner. But yeah, when I think of managed WordPress, um, that's what I'm expecting. Updates. You keep things up to, so I don't have to worry about anything other than maybe writing some blog posts, uploading some new pictures, just the stuff that a website owner should worry about. So yeah, I believe it has to be the industry standard. And I know there was discussion about um, even using the term, managed WordPress. Um, and I believe that, I think a lot of that, um, some of that angst that came out over the term managed WordPress may have been just because so many people offer it, but they're not doing it. You manage WordPress. Really? What do you do? You make it so that I can spin up a new version of WordPress for a new domain, quickly. That's not managed. That's just, you're offering, free installation service or something. I don't know. But yeah, I firmly believe that.
Well, we had an episode last year on season 1 called "What the Frick is Managed Hosting," and that was because Jess Frick from Pressival at the time, she had come on the show. But we wanted to address exactly that, which is that the term managed hosting doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to everybody.
Right.
And so we actually dedicated a decent part of season 1 to identifying what exactly is managed hosting. And it was a question that we asked a lot because I think hosting companies have this mentality of, it's a buzzword, it's a jargon, so we'll throw it on our website. But if you're not clearly defining it, then it actually kind of dilutes the meaning of it across the board. So, I agree with you completely that if you're offering managed hosting, whether you're offering managed hosting or not, frankly, I think it's something that should be done because I think at the end of the day, too, if you're offering shared hosting and you're putting WordPress on a shared box, I could be wrong about this, but I think the majority of those customers are actually, the ones paying $2, $3 a month for unlimited sites on a shared box are probably the ones that need the most help managing things anyway. So, some aspect of this I think needs to trickle down to basically all WordPress hosting,
Right. Yeah. And, like I said, there was some angst, last year or whatever about just using the term WordPress. And, yeah, to me, if you're going to include that in the name of your service, then yeah, you have to support it. You have to, manage it, and managing it means, you keeping plugins up to date and things like that. Themes even, um, the whole, you have to monitor things, in our world, the key terms that people used to always throw around was heuristics. We do heuristic scanning. And I used to love going to different shows and stuff, and I'd ask people, so what do you consider heuristic scanning to be? Oh, well, it's like a deeper level, and you're like, okay, so you have no idea.
Right, right.
So yeah, we've got our terms in the security world. You guys, and on your end have your terms, but yeah, I think that managed WordPress has to be, all encompassing.
Yeah. If we think about that from that perspective, what position should a host be playing into with AI and managed hosting? Should AI be something that a hosting company is using regularly to, look for infiltration? Should they be relying on a security company like yours, Patchstag, Jetpack? Like, because of the fact that the majority of our audiences are people working in the hosting industry, I'm asking because what do you think they should be hearing from you in terms of how they should be using AI to secure websites?
I honestly believe, and I'm a vendor, but I honestly believe they should be doing it in house. Um, and I tried that years ago, um, reaching out to some of the hosting providers, like, hey, look, you guys pay me as a consultant. I'll come show you how to set this up internally, and you guys run it in your data centers, and write the program interfaces and so on. So, but I'll show you how to get all the information you need. And they're just like, nah, that sounds too expensive. Like, okay, but so I think it boiled down to I probably didn't do a good enough job selling them on why they needed it, but they really do. I mean, you have to know what's going on. If you're not streaming and analyzing access logs in real time, you have no clue. Where you're going to look at them after a website's been infected. Oh yeah, look at this. Oh wow, we probably should have caught that, huh? I mean, to me, they should be doing it. And if an agency is offering, full managed web, WordPress services, to me, it has to be part of that as well. I mean, farming it out, to a vendor, that's okay, I guess. But then it's truly a full expense. I mean, you're paying, possibly per website, per server, per whatever, but it's something that you could do internally, and with AI, for some people say, well, then I got to hire staff. If I do all that internally, then I got to hire staff. Not necessarily. I mean, like I said, with AI, you definitely don't have to hire, a whole team of people. You could have AI implemented at the core and let it do the crunching, the sending of, alerts, whatever. I mean, the system
Right.
is, you can have it right there. So,
One of the things that I worked on years ago, I mentioned Brew Protect in the last episode. There was a company I co-founded. We ended up bringing to Automatic, and the way it worked was that we identified attack vectors from across the internet, trying to infiltrate, brute force into websites. But the magic was that we would update our blacklist, these attack vectors, in real time, and then distribute them via the plugin. And so it was hosting agnostic. The hosting company would update their own blacklists, but usually overnight. So they didn't have this real-time data. But the benefit is that we could learn from attack vectors that were hitting, a site on host A, and then use that to protect a site on host B. And that was actually, a really wonderful way to use like cloud-powered data and share it among even competitors. And it makes me think, because if you're suggesting that every single hosting company should be doing this in-house, that is an investment. That's an investment in time. It's an investment in the updating of, the skills, all these things. So it makes me think, would it make sense then for someone like yourself to be building a skill, an AI agent skill that could be leased, borrowed, open sourced to hosting companies, so that way, when it comes to checking logs, when it comes to looking for vulnerabilities, they don't have to train their agent every single time. They can rely on maybe something that's a little bit more like a open protocol. But that leads me to another question, because that to me sounds like something easily commercialized. Like you could sell that, you could go to hosting companies and tell them how powerful this is and all that. But we work in WordPress, so our default is to open source things. What do you think the ethical answer is there if you were to open source your AI training skill on how to detect these things? Would that just make it easier for people using AI to hack, to know what to look for and maybe get around these things? How do you balance that when you're trying to, stop people from using the information you're using ethically to, unethically?
right. Yeah. And that's something, I come across, it runs through my brain all the time. I could just open source this. If I'm looking at it, me being an altruistic, individual, I could just open source this, and millions and millions and millions of websites will be safer because of it. But open source means it's open source, which means hackers get it. So, when you talk about a skills file, we have the skills file. that we
I
use
would imagine you
internally.
do. Yeah,
You
sure.
know,
Right.
we have numerous skills files, but to open source that, yeah, now the hackers know what you're looking for, and not that it's any big secret, but I mean, it kind of is. Like, my brain's just wired. Like, I have no. I love music. I love art. I have no talent in those areas. None. I did a website years ago, and my wife, who's very artistic, looked at it and she goes, "You're not going to put that on the internet, are you?" But so I have this innate ability where I can see things and go back to the lawnmower days, um, and analyze and put together how it happened. Um, and so, like I said, we have these skills files. I don't want hackers to have access to them. So if somebody can show me a way where I can open source my stuff but not give it to hackers, I'm all ears. I really am.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm not an open source licensing expert, but I wonder if there's some way to make something available, but put some kind of ethical, uh, line in the sand. I don't know, where you have to verify who you are and you promise to protect the information or something like that. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter though, because all it takes is one person to publish it, right? And then
right.
all of a sudden it's available to
I mean,
everybody.
look at.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
an interesting problem to have.
Claude was just released into the wild, right?
Yeah,
Recently, they released the source code for Claude. So I mean, how can what do you do? I don't know, but
right,
but
right.
I also
Yeah,
think
but it is interesting because I think the easier you make these things, like then, you think about, well, are you actually aiding the hacker? Well, you may not be aiding them in the sense that like you're giving them a way in that they otherwise wouldn't have figured out, but you are probably making their testing even faster, right? Because then they can try and do a bunch of things and then just ask the skill if it detected it, and
right,
even probably have it running in real time and just have warnings go off when it's it's detected, and then you find another way around. It'll just accelerate them in their efforts.
right, yeah. People have asked me for years, why don't you have a thing on your site where I can upload a file and it'll tell me if it's malicious or not, like because that's going to be a total testing ground for hackers. I mean,
Right.
they
Yeah.
they find your site, they upload a file. Oh yeah, it detects it, or oh no, it doesn't. Look at I made these changes. Now it doesn't detect it. Bam! Let's send that one out to all the websites we have control of. So yeah, it. I don't know. Like I said, if somebody could sit down with me and explain a way that I could open source my stuff, um, I'm all ears. I really am.
One thing that comes to mind for me, which is interesting, is Automatic is a member and sponsor of the Secure Hosting Alliance. If anybody at home is interested, you can go to hostingsecurity.net. It's basically an amalgamation of hosting companies coming together to stand up and say that we are practicing ethical standards and securing our infrastructure. They also do a lot of work around governance and making sure that our hosting company or the open web's best interests are served in lawmaking and things like that. I wonder if a group like that might be a great place to start, where that these are hosting companies who are invested in the securing of their customers and their websites. They do have ethical guidelines that they abide by and that they're verified by this group. Maybe there's something there. Maybe joining that group and then making that available to those hosting companies in that way would be helpful. And I think this is one of those situations where, this is a complete side note, but I think it's worth talking about, is that everybody always asks these questions. If I'm open sourcing something, how am I going to make money with it? And Tom, I bet you $1,000,000, just grabbing a random number. But I bet you if you were the expert who was providing open source skill sets for AI to protect sites, that you're also going to be seen as the expert to call when something's harder to solve, right? Or
Right,
whatever. So yes, you might be giving something away, but at the same time, I think it validates your expertise and brings customers to your front door. And I think that's kind of the power of open source, right? Like,
right,
yes, you're giving something away, but you're also going to be bringing in a lot more customers at the same time too.
I think there's a company you're probably familiar with. Um, they're open source, and I believe they have a market cap of, I don't know, $4 or $5 billion. They have a .com and a .org. Let's see, I can't think of the name of it. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
really? I'm
yeah.
sure you can't.
One of the things I was thinking of from our previous episode is, I think a lot of time, you mentioned about how people don't want to update plugins because they're afraid it's going to break something. But I think the other thing I was thinking of is they also don't think that their website's going to get hit. I got a small mom and pop shop. What do they want with me? So
Right.
I don't need to worry about all this. It's the same reason why they don't pay for security. I don't
Yeah.
need it. Nah, they're not going to find me.
That
So,
brings me back to another problem, which is the race to the bottom on pricing because of the fact that hosting companies have these super slim margins and they're trying to constantly, cut out all of these features in order to get down to the $2 a month hosting. They end up putting security into an add-on, a bolt-on, which is why I love, I mentioned it before, and I am biased, but like Jetpack offers a lot of free security services, which I encourage hosting companies just make it available to those customers out of the gate.
mhm,
No longer offering vanilla WordPress. Nobody is. It's very hard to find vanilla WordPress on a hosting scheme. So, most customers are used to a plugin being included, right?
right,
So, bring in as many security features as you can and pre-configure them. I think that's the step that people miss is that you look whether it's Jetpack or WordPress or whatever it is that you're looking at, it usually requires some level of configuration. And if you're not doing that for the customer, but you're installing it for them, you're missing a big thing here is that you're installing it for them because they don't have the expertise and the knowledge that it's important enough to do themselves, but
right,
then you're not configuring it for them, so then it's not on and it doesn't work.
right,
So yeah, it's definitely something where a hosting company I feel like has the responsibility to step in more, and I think that selling security features that are table stakes for being on the web actually does have a detriment to the WordPress ecosystem as a whole. We talk about this all the time, right? Your first WordPress experience can be your last WordPress experience if it's not a good one. And I think, getting hacked is enough reason for people to feel like I might want to try something else. So, not to mention the overhead and the cost for a hosting company to have to manage that. Yes, they might outsource the remediation and tell the customer they have to pay for it, but let's not discount the fact that every support ticket has a multi-dollar, cost to it. If you're charging $2 a month and you're getting a support ticket once a month, you're already losing out, right?
right,
So, especially with security tickets, they're going to take even more time, a lot more overhead. So, in
right,
the end, I think it's actually quite valuable to customers. And if we can get ourselves out of this race to the bottom on pricing, then we can provide fully managed WordPress at a cheaper rate. We can provide these security features at a cheaper rate and help people to have a much better experience.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah. So
I agree. Yeah, the race to the bottom is nobody's going to win.
yeah. So tell me, what is your thought process on giving back to the WordPress community? One of the conversations that we had early on was around utilizing the AI tools to help. We talked last episode about the actual um, um, review of a plugin. So someone writes a new plugin, they go to put it on the WordPress directory. Maybe they're not even following the WordPress guidelines. They get a no that you're not going to be accepted. You mentioned that you actually put in those guidelines into an early warning system or skill set or something where you can actually tell them, hey, you're probably not going to qualify to be listed on the WordPress directory because you're not following these guidelines. But what about all the other plugins that are already out there that have been up there for a long time? Do you think there's a way to solve for that?
When I first started this, um, I said, we do more than just WordPress websites, but obviously WordPress is, the largest platform out there. With our plugin analyzer, my whole intention was to make it open source or make it free. Because as I understand it, and you know more about the ecosystem than I do. The people who are reviewing plugins now, they do that on a volunteer basis, right?
Yeah, a lot of what goes into making WordPress possible is people volunteering. There are some companies out there who sponsor folks, but for the most part, yeah, it's very community driven, volunteer driven.
People need to, or it had been stated, people need to contribute back to WordPress. And I kept thinking, God, what the heck can I do? Can I make my service free? That doesn't, like you said, that doesn't pay the bills. But if I could come up with something like this, where, and I'm not trying to eliminate, the volunteers. Maybe some of those people really enjoy doing that. I don't know, but if I could offer
I
something,
highly doubt you'll be eliminating them. I think you'll just be giving them the ability to breathe a little bit.
that could be. But I mean, when you
Yeah.
see something where people are complaining in forums about, I submitted my plugin, a month ago and I still haven't heard anything back. I mean, to me, that's just crying for a solution.
Yeah.
And, it, I would like to present this to the powers that be, um, and see if that it's something that they would like to try to implement. And I'll just say, here you go. I just contributed. Not saying that's
Yeah.
going to be my only contribution, but to me, it could be a big one. If you could
Right.
shorten that cycle from 30 days of people not hearing stuff to I don't know, like we've already run some pretty big um, plugins through our system, and I think the longest it took was it's like 900 seconds to fully analyze. So, and like I said, the part to the system,
900 seconds for for a single plugin, or
yes, but I mean, this could be put on a bunch of different servers, and you know, you,
right.
they all pull from a queue and just keep crunching away. But the thing that we've built into this that I think is really key is it produces code that will fix. If it finds a problem, it produces code that'll fix the problem. So
Right. And I think that's a huge, huge win, because if we think about the way in which the WordPress community, or rather the plugins that exist out there, are written by the WordPress community, a lot of times it's not by companies who have large staffs. A lot of the plugins are written by individual contributors, people who are just trying to, take something they built for their website or for their client and make it available to the rest of the world. And they don't necessarily have a group of people to constantly be updating and helping with these things. So I
right,
love that, because it's not just this conversation I was having internally at work today too, is that, a spell checker, for example, will tell you that you got something, you spelled something wrong. And if you take the time, you can actually read the change. But for the most part, like autocorrect or whatever will change the way I spell, I don't know, there's some words that just are still beyond me, my dyslexia. But like autocorrect just fixes it, right? That, to me, that's akin to like cars that have the self-driving or self-parking features, right? Like
right,
it'll parallel park for you. And I think if we see that being ubiquitous, we'll actually see the skill of being able to parallel park go away, right?
right,
I think what's really interesting about AI is that instead of it, you can train it. You can do this. You can ask your AI that, say, when it's spell checking, when it's grammar checking, when it's checking code on a plugin, not only correct it for me, but teach me why, right? So, I think the best versions of of skills that I've seen around, like helping people be better writers through AI, is not just that it makes suggestions, but it also helps you understand why, what is the English rule that you didn't follow, or why is this best practice, or, whatever it might be. But the same thing goes with code. If you can turn back to them and say, this isn't just a threat, here's an XSS issue or something like that, but here's why you want to change it. And here's the best, things to do. Like, you know, um, um,
escaping
don't know,
characters and
escaping your characters or something like that, right? Exactly. That's what
right,
exactly what was coming up for. I had the function, the double underscore in my head, but I couldn't remember what it was. But like those types of things can actually come back and help you become a better programmer and a
right,
better developer. And so I think if we're smart about the way in which we utilize these tools, not only are we going to improve and harden the security of all these things, but we can actually move a lot faster and learn from these things so that the next time we write a plugin, we're actually implementing those things right away.
right.
That's yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, that was my goal, was to make it full cycle, where it will produce, the correct code for you, but then also make this a contribution to the WordPress ecosystem and, you know,
I think
le-
that's really great. And I think one area too where you could be really helpful in assisting the community. You mentioned in the last episode the importance of logs and data. I think it would be really interesting that if we got to a place where this was implemented and helping to support the securing of these plugins, it'd be great to have an end of the year report, understand, how we improve things, what were the most common vulnerabilities, what things can we put in practice to help ensure that um, people are writing better plugins, but also what can hosts do to surface these things early by
mm-hmm,
providing a better security user experience rather than just relying on third-party tools to solve it all.
right. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I have nothing against the third party tools at all. Um, but, same time, when you think about it from a logistics standpoint, why not fix the problem rather than
Yeah,
giving everybody a Band-Aid? Why not fix the problem and
right.
be done with it? Or as one of my people said something about, oh, it's like curing malaria. You could either give everybody unlimited bottles of DEET, or you could come up with a way to kill mosquitoes. That's like, yeah, okay, yeah. There's
Right.
logic in there somewhere, but yeah,
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, that you can either address the problem by trying to fix the symptom, or you can address the problem by fixing the source.
right.
And yeah, exactly. All right. Well, listen, this was another great episode. It was a lot of fun talking to you. I can't wait to see what you are able to do to help out the community and empower others. I would love to see, how you approach helping hosts too. Maybe that's something I can help you with, is putting
Mm-hmm.
you in contact with hosting companies to see how we can get them leveled up in this world of AI. Tom, thank you so much for joining. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me, and yeah, I'm sure we'll be bumping into each other somewhere around the world.
For sure.
All right.
Definitely.
Thank you very
All right,
much,
take care.
Jesse.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Impressive Hosting, where we uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. Do you have a follow-up question for today's guest, thought or comment on anything we talked about, a future guest suggestion, a hosting horror story? What do you think makes great WordPress hosting? All your comments shape this show. Drop them on impressive.host. We also appreciate you following us on social media and subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Finally, do check out our list of open source projects that need support at impressive.host. Whether it's code, community, or cache, you can make a difference. See you next time.